Sweeney Todd, the demon Barber of Fleet Street, was just a fictional character, wasn't he? Maybe not. A 17th century North American explorer recounted a supposedly true and harrowing tale that perfectly matched the events of the Penny Dreadful published 200 years later. Today on American Strangeness, the real Sweeney Todd. Like Sherlock Holmes, Sweeney Todd, the demon barber of Fleet Street, is a Victorian-age literary character whose worldwide popularity and longevity might lead one to believe he was a real person. While in London, after all, you can visit Holmes' residence on 221B Baker Street, in actuality the Sherlock Holmes Museum, or, if you dare, take a stroll looking for Todd's barbershop at 186 Fleet Street, in literary tradition beside St. Dunstan in the West Church, at 186A Fleet Street. First serialized as a penny dreadful from 1846 to 1847, The String of Pearls, a romance set in 1785, explained how Todd killed his customers by dropping them via trick barber chair through a trapdoor into his cellar, which broke their necks. If needed, Todd slit their throats with a straight razor to polish them off. The barber collected their valuables, dismembered the remains, and gave them to baker Miss Lovett, who used the human flesh as ingredients in her meat pies. Todd is undone when a young sailor comes searching for his friend, last seen in the barber shop, a saga that unravels the barber's dark secret. Todd is finally exposed with the discovery of hundreds of victims stashed in a crypt beneath St. Dunstan's church. In one last act of malice, the barber poisons Lovett before being captured and sent to the gallows. As early as the first collected volume of The String of Pearls in 1850, publisher E. Lloyd proclaimed the tale's veracity. In answer to the many inquiries that have been from time to time made regarding the fact of whether there ever was such a person as Sweeney Todd in existence, they said, "We can unhesitatingly say that there certainly was such a man, and the record of his crimes is still to be found in the chronicles of criminality of this country. The house in Fleet Street, which was the scene of Todd's crimes, is no more. A fire which destroyed some half-dozen buildings on that side of the way involved Todd's in destruction. But the secret passage, although, no doubt, partially blocked up with the rebuilding of St. Dunstan's church, connecting the vaults of that edifice with the cellars of what was Todd's house in Fleet Street, still remains." As a historical note, the original medieval period St. Dunstan's was demolished and replaced by the current structure in the 1830s. Modern scholarship isn't so sure about Sweeney Todd's existence as a real person. "There are no clear answers," states PBS. "No public records substantiate the existence of a London barber named Todd in the late 18th century or, for that matter, of a barbershop located on Fleet Street." According to Londonist, it has been generally accepted that Todd never actually existed and that, like Bram Stoker's Count Dracula, he is an amalgam of different sources, a composite of obscure horror tales, known murderers, folklore, and the very human fear of cannibalism. Sweeney Todd's gruesome crimes would be best contained to lurid Victorian literature, but the truth is that there is a historical basis, only it took place about a century earlier, and not in England, but in France. To find the origin of Sweeney Todd, you must look in an unexpected place: the autobiography of Peter Martinson Lindström, a Swedish engineer specializing in the science of fortification and an adventurer who voyaged from Stockholm to the colony of New Sweden on the northeast American coast in 1653 to 1654. During his 2-year stay in the New World, Lindström mapped the Delaware River and befriended the native Lenni Lenape. Lindström's written account, completed late in life, was translated into English by Amandus Johnson and published as Geographia Americae, with an account of the Delaware Indians, by the Swedish Colonial Society of Philadelphia in 1925. The Geographia begins with Lindström's voyage aboard the Orne from Stockholm to New Sweden, starting in October 1653. After a stay in Gothenburg, the Orne departs for New Sweden on February 22, 1654, and sails directly into cracking cold winter and a great storm, the ship nearly becoming frozen in by ice. Once the crew successfully navigates to sea, they take course along the Scottish and English coasts. Adrift in darkness and violent blowing storms for 2 weeks, the passengers and crew of the Orne are both surprised and delighted when they realize they have shot far off course and reached the French coast. As the sun rises on February 16th, the Orne drops anchor in the port of Calais. Passengers and crew spend the morning on shore, leaving just past noon and continuing along the English Channel. But those few hours in France were long enough for Lindstrom to glean the following tale. Lindstrom wrote, "At that time, here in Calais, many delicious, palatable, and rare pies were baked, which were widely cried out for sale. I will relate a story which happened then in Calais, concerning on an affair between a barber and a pie baker, which took place thus. The barber had a front chamber in his house in front of his own room. Below that chamber floor, he had made for himself a secret cellar, and above the floor was a square trap door, so nicely made that one who did not look for it closely could not see where it was joined, and the said trap door shut so hard that a person could sit on a chair on it, and it did not go down by it. But when one stamped once hard on it with the foot, it fell down immediately. Now, when any traveler, who was of a foreign nation, came to this barber to be shaved, then he took him into this said chamber, placed a chair on the aforesaid trapdoor for him to sit upon, while he was to shave him. The stranger did thus. When now the barber began to shave him and came to shave him under his chin, he cut his throat, stamped thus while he cut him on the said trapdoor with his foot, by which the trapdoor with the man in chair fell down into the cellar, and immediately thereafter he robbed him. And because the said barber and pie baker were in company and counsel together in this affair, the former sold the human flesh to the latter, of which he baked the above-mentioned rare pies. They were at last discovered and betrayed in this manner, namely, 2 traveling students from a foreign country arrived there, and in going along the street came right before the barber's house. Then one companion said to the other, "Brother, go and engage good lodgings for us somewhere, where you can find some good people. I will, in the meantime, go into this barber to get shaved, where I will wait for you so long until you return here to me again." However, the barber did away with him, after his usual aforesaid manner and custom with others. Now, finally, the other one returned and asked the barber after his companion. He answered that he went his way immediately after he had been shaved. But this companion of his did not believe it, rather considered his companion's word to be more creditable, upon which he relied, but did not yet know what he should do. Nor would he risk to accuse this barber right away, although he might have his suspicion, but went away at first everywhere about the city and sought for him, but did not find him. He therefore went back to the same barber again and began to quarrel with him, telling him that he must produce his companion, "For here in the house I must have him again," he said. At this the barber waxed angry and wanted to treat him with striking and beating. The other one then made a complaint before a magistrate of the city, stating the nature of the case concerning his comrade, with the request that he might get some good men to go with him to search the barber's house for his companion, which was granted him. Now, when those arrived there, who were ordered to search the barber's house, they searched everywhere, but did not find him. Finally, they came into the said chamber, where the sergeant stepped on the trapdoor, saying in an angry tone, "According to the word and account of this comrade of his, we must really find this man here in the house." And with this he stamped on the trapdoor. Thereby the sergeant fell down into the cellar on the comrade of the other, who had not yet been undressed. Here the cellar was as full of skulls and skeletons as a charnel house in a churchyard. Thus both the barber and the pie baker were arrested and locked up, and soon afterwards received as a reward a miserable departure from this life. This account is written with the object of instructing him who intends to travel and gain experience, in the first place that he may herefrom be able to see how very necessary it is for him to have a good and faithful companion, and secondly, that he may know how to guard himself against such villains in similar and other cases and instances. In translating this story, Johnson made no reference to Sweeney Todd in his footnotes. Had he been familiar with the tale, he surely would have mentioned the glaring fact that the entire premise of the String of Pearls, never mind a few details like the anonymous barber's name and the gender of the baker, is present in this historical account dated to 1654. Did Lindstrom record second-hand news of a killing spree, which survived in oral tradition and crossed the Channel, inspiring the String of Pearls decades later? Maybe, but Johnson doubted the tale of the killer barber and sought another inspiration. He wrote, "This story is found in a number of variations. Human flesh is relished by many tribes, and the basis for Lindstrom's story, told by some seaman, may have had a foundation of truth. He cited his own ethnography of certain Bantu tribes of West Africa. Johnson called the Geographia an interesting document from our colonial period, but he cautioned that it is not always reliable, in this respect sharing the failings of other and similar treatises of the age. He suggested that certain passages were based on fancy, like Lindstrom's report of encountering mermaids and sirens while traversing the Eastern Passage from the Canary Islands to North America. The adventurers said these channels contained more mermaids and sirens than any other places in the Western Ocean, their appearance heralding storms. Lindstrom claimed to have seen a mermaid floating on the water with gold, glittering hair of 10 or 12 fathoms in length, holding a mirror. Meanwhile, the alluring songs of sirens caused men who were sick and delirious to leap overboard the oar, only some able to be rescued. According to Johnson, 17th century sailors did not look upon mermaids and sirens as creatures of the imagination, but as living beings of flesh and blood. Their reality was taken for granted. They were something every seaman had encountered, something every seaman could vouch for, he wrote. He continued, "We must not, therefore, class these narratives as mere inventions. They had a basis of truth in them to this extent that some unexplained phenomena or some weird creature of the sea was transformed into mythological characters of fantastic shapes by minds steeped in superstition, feeling themselves surrounded by unseen forces of the spirit world and momentarily expecting hobgoblins and whatnot to throw off their veil and monsters of evil to raise their heads out of the treacherous deep, especially in those far-off waters which ships seldom sailed. The head of a sea cow, seen at a respectful distance among floating weeds, would be a sufficient and true evidence of the existence of mermaids, with long golden hair, to a man who knew such things existed, although these charming maidens rarely appeared at close quarters except to the chosen few." Johnson said of Lindstrom's testimony, "The same can be said of his flying fish that could go 10 miles at a stretch, and the pie baker of Calais, who waxed prosperous by preparing delicious pies of human flesh. These stories were partly based on tales of seafaring men, and adopted as gospel truth. Lindstrom was a child of his time, and believed what he wrote, glowing with the enchanted memories of childhood as he penned his memoirs in later years," the translator suggested. Lindstrom also presented the Calais story as a parable about the dangers of traveling unwary and alone. So, can we chalk up the seed of Sweeney Todd's origin to a Swedish author's imaginative flourishes? Well, there is a noticeably big difference between Lindstrom's references to mystical sea people and his story about the demon Barber of France: the level of detail. The mermaid and siren accounts are mere sketches, while the Calais murders are given a few dedicated pages. It certainly appears that Lindstrom heard a vivid tale, strongly told, and exciting enough to reach the young Swede's ears during the few short hours he spent in Calais. Yes, the drama of the murderous barber and the baker of human pies might just be folklore that has persisted for close to 400 years. But it would be logical for a story with so much staying power to have a basis in fact. I'm pretty convinced. Sweeney Todd was real. Do you think you would approve of his portrayal by Johnny Depp?